My guest today is Natwar Maheshwari. Natwar is Director of Developer Programs at Algolia, a search platform focused on developers. Over 10,000 companies and millions of developers use Algolia to build search features. Today, Algolia powers 1.5 trillion searches a year. That's 4 times more than Bing, Yahoo, DuckDuckGo, Baidu, and Yandex combined. Previous to Algolia, Natwar worked as a senior product marketing manager at Mailchimp and was responsible for the marketing of Mailchimp's developers API. And previous to Mailchimp, Natwar worked across several positions in the areas of engineering, product management, and product marketing. Natwar, you've been working on products with a non-developer audience before, for example, during your time at Around.io. I'm very curious, how do you think is marketing to developers different to, let's say, classical B2B SaaS products?
I think marketing to developers is more about what and how, a lot more than anything else. So, for example, Around.io was my own SaaS company, a small startup that I built. I was selling to Etsy sellers or e-commerce sellers, right? For them, I really had to get to the final outcome first and then like how part of it. Like that was the biggest difference. And honestly, like that was a learning for me. I came from engineering background. So getting to like not just talking about features, but what those features would let these sellers do was the learning. And it took me more than a year to kind of understand that. This is like 2013, 2014. So this is like early stages in my journey as well. So that was that, right? And even at Mailchimp, like even though I was not responsible for but Mailchimp primarily marketed to marketers. And when you're talking to marketers, you can have a lot more fancy language, a lot more fluff, if you will, right? Like you can do a lot more with your marketing in terms of what is the final outcome is, right? Like you will sell more because you're sending more emails, right? Mailchimp lets you send more emails, right? That's the point. So, but when you're marketing to developers, right, like you really have to start. Like, assumption here is they don't know what you do. Like that's where I'm not talking about like your Gatsby or your Netlify that everyone knows about you. I'm talking about like companies like Algolia, right? Like a lot of people know Algolia, but a lot of people don't. So like we have to start at base. We have to start very simple. We are a search API platform, right? Like you have to start. Okay, so you're hosted search. Okay, so in their brain they have certain thing that they know. It might be like an open source product, or it might be something that they built in the past. You want to connect to that, right? And you have to start there. You cannot start at, increase your e-commerce product, the average cart value. You cannot start there because that's the final thing like that you'll build up to maybe, right? Like if you're using recommendation, personalization, whatever, right? So for developers, start with what and how very early on. I think that's very important. And it's a very hard thing when you're if you are working around other marketers who have been taught other things. So basically you're within your ecosystem also, you're kind of, having those tussles, which is fair, which is like, they're also coming from a lot of learning. So
I think that's great advice. You kind of mentioned that it's sometimes hard to work with marketeers that come from a different background. Do you have any tips how you can embrace this different kind of culture that you need when you sell and market to developers?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's about understanding someone else's experience and why they're coming to a certain conclusion that's very different than yours, right? Like I think understanding that is important, and bare minimum, you have to start at persona level. And if you're working with people who understand that, you're doing certain things for specific persona, right? I think that helps a lot. Like the moment you're like, wait. Are you talking to a business decision maker here? Or are you talking to the lead developer here? Or are you talking to like a mom and pop shop developer here? Or are you talking to a small business owner here? Right? Like, so the moment you have clarity around that, everything kind of, comes into like it becomes easier to work with other marketers and clarify, hey, that makes sense from a business perspective, right? Like, but if you're building this page primarily for developers, let's not call it that. Let's just start with calling it's a recommendations API, or it's an insights API, or that's what it is, right? Let's start there. And then as the page kind of builds, or as your marketing builds, your email, whatever you're trying to do, it builds, you add more and more like layers to it, right? But start with very simple let them just, oh, that's what you do. Like you want the developer to know that in a few seconds that's what you do. That's what you're trying to kind of talk about.
All right. Natwar, you're Director of Developer Programs at Algolia. I would love to learn a bit more about what a developer program actually is. Could you try to make a definition of it?
I can try. Like, and being very honest here, like we pretty much, we made this up. Like developer program, and the reason is like, so I work within developer experience team. I'm part of the developer experience team, and developer experience team has everything: developer relations, developer marketing, developer events, actual like DX engineers and DX EM and PM, and I'm one of them. I'm basically I lead the developer programs. What developer programs, at least how we define it, is how do you tell developers, or how do you inform developers about Algolia? Now you can say, hey, that's marketing. But the way we approach it is very different. We're like, what can I do for the developer ecosystem that's free, that's easy to use, that they don't have to put a lot of effort into, and they can still experience my product? Being very, very like, this is a very selfish thing. Like I want people to know about my product, right? Like that's the whole point of the business, right? So, but at the same time, can I deliver value to them while I'm doing it, right? So for example, one of the developer programs, and this is not something that I started, right? This was started like 7 years ago by like some really smart engineers at Algolia, engineers and developer people at Algolia. They created something called Doc Search. It's basically a developer documentation search product, and it's free. So if you have developer documentation, you can use Algolia for free. You apply for it, I go approve it, you get it. And like we even give you the front end, the back, like it crawls itself. You'll really have to do nothing. You just take that snippet, you put it on the front end, it's ready to go. The search is ready. It comes with autocomplete, everything. This was started like 7 years ago. Now we have like more than 6,000, 6,500 developer documentations on it. This has been one of the biggest developer traffic driver for us. And that's a developer program. A program is like, you can even call it like a growth thing. Like in marketing world, a lot of people call it growth hacks and whatnot, right? I don't think it's a hack. I think it was a genuine thing. Like the team that worked on it for a year to get to this place where it is today, to learn from different people, to work with developers. What are the core issues, right? And I think that's a developer program. A developer program is something that can deliver value to the developers, of course, right? At the same time, also solves one of the key things that you are responsible for. I'm responsible to make sure like 100 million developers learn about Algolia. And how is that going to happen is, I'm going to make sure that every single developer documentation is using Algolia search, via Doc Search, right? Again, it's free, right? And we opened it up and whatnot. And it's just, that's a developer program. And that solves, like, it's a win-win situation. So in my mind, if developer program is not delivering win-win, it's then there's a problem. Then figure out what can you give away? What can you do more for the community or for the segment that you're working with, or what are the pieces that you can solve, even if it means work for you. But like it'll solve, let's say, 1,000 people's problem, or 100,000 people will be able to kind of benefit from it, right? So that's a developer program. And again, like this is just a made up thing, right? It's not something, I'm pretty sure a company like, which is, let's say, for example, Netlify or any other company, right, would define it a little bit differently. Maybe you, like crowd.dev, might define it differently down the line. They're saying that, hey, developer program means this in the world, and that's what we want to propagate. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
So you already mentioned this Docs product that you have. And in fact, I've seen it on many different websites. So I think it's working well. Can you give examples of other kind of programs that you launched in the last years?
Absolutely. So like another one that I was responsible for, or I am still responsible for, but I built it from scratch, was Algolia Startup Program. What that does is basically it gives $10,000 to startups, and startups have a criteria, meaning less than 3 years old, and couple other, and less than 3 years old and less than 5 million in funding. That's the core criteria, right? What they get is they get $10,000 worth of credits for a year. That's another developer program, because what I learned, like, again, I was a startup founder myself, right? So what the learning that I had was a lot of companies that are starting, like for example, you, crowd.dev, right? Like you started recently, you might want to use the best product in the world, but like might not want to pay like money for it just yet because you're figuring things out. So that's where this came in. I'm like, okay, I can approach developers directly, or I can say, hey, if you have a startup, start using Algolia. It's free for a year, right? Like for a year, like $10,000. And $10,000 gives you a lot. Like it's quite a bit. So so that's another developer program that we call it. Like another developer program is what we call internally our logo program, meaning if you have a very big audience around developers, we will give you the product for free and we'll put our logo there. Now, again, it's a two-way thing, right? One is I get the right kind of developers to see that something called Algolia exists in the world, right? Like that's what I'm trying to do. At the same time, the person who has this audience or has this media site or whatever get to use Algolia for free. So again, it's a win-win situation, but the logo program is a lot more work because it's like a sales thing because to go back and forth. Like it's a one-on-one thing. Doc search is not one. Like doc search, someone applies, I approve them, they never have to talk to me again. Same things true for startup program. They apply for it, we approve it, they never have to talk to us again. I mean, if they want to, they can. But the point is, I'm not forcing you to talk to me or my salesperson or trying to sell you anything on top of it. It's okay. Go ahead, use the thing. If you get value out of it, awesome. I'm happy for you. If you decide to keep using it and want to pay for it, sure, that's your call, right? But logo program is a lot more back and forth, a lot more work overall. But it has its perks, man. It has its perks.
Are all those developer programs focused on increasing visibility and top of funnel traffic, or do you also have other business objectives?
Yes. Every developer program has its own core goals. So for example, Doc Search, right? Doc Search was more about visibility. Doc Search was just about, hey, you should be able to use the product or see the product in action without ever touching it, without ever even showing up to my website, right? Or signing up or getting a free tier, the free plan that we have. You can just experience it without doing any of those. Like that was, again, this was 7 years ago, right? So again, very smart people thought about this and did this very nicely. All I'm trying to do is like propagate it a little bit more. Like that's my job. The goal there is how many unique developers get to use search on a month-on-month basis, right? And that number is pretty big right now. And I don't think I can share that. I don't know if I can share that. So I'm not gonna, but it's like, I'm very happy with it. I'm tracking it. I'm trying to understand what else can I do there, where we're thinking about those things. For Algolia startup program, right? The goal of the startup program was, one of the things that we heard within the ecosystem was, hey, it's a great product, but I really cannot use it because you'll charge me and I don't have the money right now. I'm figuring things out as a startup. So like, okay, so that means that if you figure things out, let's say, I don't know if 1 year is enough or not, right? Like we never know. But like after 1 year, are you going to keep using the product or not? Or are you going to say, hey, you know what? It's going to cost me, PhonePayGo is going to cost me $200 a month. I'm not going to use it. Or no, it delivers me way more value than $200. So I'm going to keep paying for it or keep using it. So the goal for the startup program was, can we attract right kind of startups who in a year will be at a place where they'll be like, yeah, you know what? This delivers us enough value, right? Of course, we were also a startup like 10 years ago. Algolia went through YC. So, I mean, I personally have a very soft spot for startups because I was a startup founder, right? But so does the company. So that kind of helped a lot. Like a lot of times leadership would be like, yeah, it's okay if we don't make money out of this. If you can get enough people to just tell that Algolia exists and we are like a cool product and like they can do things with it, that's fine. Like even that has a lot of merit and value. But I do track like how many people came to committed contracts, which happens a lot. Like actually people whose startups just take off, like, okay, you gave them $10,000, they will eat up those $10,000 in 4 months. And then they're like, hey, I'm paying you $2,500 a month. And then we'll be like, hey, come to a committed contract. It'll be much cheaper for you and whatnot. So like, we'll give them all the options. You can do PayGo, you can do committed, all of them. So like every single program, right, has a goal attached to it. Because again, as I told you, we're basically making it up as we go along, right? So logo program had a very, very clear goal around what's the amount of usage, how much are we like in terms of usage that they're getting, what are we getting out of in terms of number of clicks and number of like how many people are seeing our logo, how many people are coming to our website, signing up, all of that is tracked. And that kind of helps you justify, okay, can I basically sit down and cook up another program, right? Like let's say website search or whatever, right? Like, can I do more of those? And so far our experience has been, yes, we can do more because the ROI is great. We get to do a lot more for the community. And again, the goal is simple, right? Like one to many, right? Like can I do something once and like a lot more people can benefit out of it? Again, win-win, right? Like they should be able to benefit out of it, at the same time I should be able to benefit out of it as well, right? So
Natwar, we already touched how marketing to developers is different to non-dev products. What would you say is the biggest challenge in marketing a developer product?
Yeah, that's a great question. Marketing a developer product, right? Like every time you can do show, not tell, like that's the best case scenario that's my biggest learning, honestly, like in last, 3 years. Show, don't tell. But what that means is in terms of operations, like, so for example, crowd.dev is like 10 people company right now, right? You can still hack a lot of things, go to website and say, hey, I'm going to just take over this part of the website and do this here, right? As your company grows, you'll start putting systems in place. And those systems are basically built to make sure that a lot more people in marketing can do a lot more things. What that means is templatizing. What that means is you use CMS systems that are template based. It might still be like, pretty cool templates, but still template based. So what happens is with time, it becomes harder and harder to do unique things, right? So again, like it depends on the stage of the company. When Algolia was way younger, I think they did a lot more things that were cooler. Right now, it's not like we don't want to. I think it's more about what kind of systems are in place and how do we work with them, because like we have much bigger core marketing team, right? They also have a lot of things that they want to do, and I'm respectful for that, and they're respectful for my work. So I think that's one of the things that I'm learning. I'm like, okay, what if we take part of this ecosystem and bring it in the DX team and make it like a small startup which can quickly like build things, show things. How do we integrate? Like this is something that someone else in the team came up with. Can we integrate CLI into our docs? We have CLI, and how cool would that be? Like, of course, we took the inspiration from Stripe. I think they have done it already. So yeah, taking those inspirations and like, okay, can we do this, right? And then you have to understand operationally how it would work, right? I know like a lot of developers would think, oh, you can actually just go ahead and do that, right? Like, but if your whole domain is sitting on a CMS, so either you go on a subdomain, you go on a subfolder, then like you have to figure out those ops. That kind of gets challenging with time as you grow. That's the learning. And again, I can be like, I've only worked on like decent sized companies or bigger companies for developer marketing so far. But I think things would be different if you're a smaller company, right? Like you can say, oh, you have one developer and one marketer, go figure things out, right? And then you can try some different things.
If you think back about the time when you started with developer marketing, what's been your biggest surprise marketing to developers? What didn't you expect before?
The biggest surprise, I think that the learning was keep it simple. Like just don't try to overdo anything. Like, and again, like I think I can talk about, let's say, for example, Algolia or Mailchimp. Both of these companies have decent amount of traffic on the website, right? So what happens is you see the same message every day, day over day, month over month, week over week, year over year, and you're like, oh, this is stale, this is old. So every week, every other week, I go into Google Analytics and look at data. I'm like, okay, how many net new people show up on this page? For them, this is the first time they're reading this. I would love to kind of, platformize it and like add more complicated things to a message. But I think staying grounded is very, very hard because you are seeing this day in and day out. And like, oh my God, it's old. But for like 70% of the people who are first time like interacting with your product or your website or your message, it's new for them. It's not stale. It's not, because it's simple. Like, so that's something that I think not just me, but a lot of people within marketing, with not just developer marketing, but others as well, like struggle with, right? That, oh, this is old. No, man, it's old because you see it every day. It's not old. It's a pretty clean, simple message. I think keeping clean and simple is hard. And I never thought like that would be a hard thing, but with experience, with time, I'm realizing, yeah, it's a hard thing. And you just have to constantly tell yourself that it's okay. Because sometimes someone like will say something on Twitter, or like something will call you out on something, or your leadership might ask you to do something, right? You just have to say, hey, no, we're trying to keep it simple. It might be stale for us, but not. So you have to kind of remind that message to yourself, to others around you. I think that's just me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that point. Actually, one exercise that we do to keep things simple is that we always ask people in user research interviews, like, hey, what was your first impression looking at the website? Like, how long did it take you to understand what we're doing? Or let them explain to you, what do you think? Crowd dev in our example.
Yeah.
What our product is and so on, based on their marketing material that you consumed. But yeah, great point.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So another thing that I started with this, and now I'm very careful about this, is like asking your internal team as well, right? You have to be careful about it because they also have been around the same thing for a long time. So even if like at logic level, they're still developers, but I think if you have been close to something for a long time, like we've become biased towards certain things. I think we all like, I think I do too. So I think being careful with that as well is an important piece of the puzzle, right? Like, so asking a net new person who has barely interacted with you or not interacted with you is like, we love to see that. Like, I love to see the like recordings of people trying to use our product for the first time and whatnot. And it's very humbling. It's very, very humbling when you think, oh my God, we're a big company. You have done this, how many, customers, this, that, right? But it's a very humbling experience. And I think we do that pretty much, all the time. So.
Yeah, getting a fresh perspective is really valuable. I also always tend to look at, for example, our product or our marketing website. I'm like, okay, this is so plain simple. Like, it seems like our product is super silly. Like, we have to make it a bit more fancy. And then I always try to remind myself, okay, there's actually people that, like, for them, it's still way too complex because they obviously don't, like, live that topic every day like you do, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
You think about that 8 hours per day, like about search platforms and search APIs and so on. But for a developer that comes to your page, it's just like a small part of the day and small problem that they're trying to solve.
Just to kind of add to what you're saying, right? Like, I think within companies, within our jobs, within our work, whatever you want to call it, right? We start treating something as very, very important because it's very important to us. But we need to be very, very grounded in this thing that it's not as important to our customers, right? It's part of their life. It's a small part of their life, right? And again, I think that's a very hard thing to like grasp. Like, when you're very passionate about something, like, oh my God, it's so cool. Like, what we're doing is so cool. But like, at the end of the day, search is a one piece of an equation for any developer in the world. It's like one, like, depending upon whether you're in SaaS, e-commerce, media, whatever, right? Doesn't matter. It's one piece of the equation for you. Maybe you are a search developer, so like it's a bigger piece of equation for you. But for the most part, for 90% of the developers, right, it's going to be a small piece of the thing. Like, you are one of the 25 APIs that they use, right? Like, let's be honest about it, and let's kind of accept that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, for you, I think crowd.dev, like for DevRel folks, they might spend a lot more time inside it, but that's it, right? Like, a lot of people in the company will just see the report that you generate at the end of the week or end of the month, and that's all they need from it. So I think us understanding that and accepting that is important. That can get very blurry very quickly.
Yeah, true. Closing question. What's a controversial view on developer marketing that you have that most people won't agree with?
Yeah. I don't know if controversial or not, but I think I'll come back to what I said earlier, right? About keeping it simple. And I see behaviorally, people are not keeping it simple. Like, it's a hard thing to, a lot of people might say it, but if you look at like behavior, it's different. And that's, I don't know if it's controversial or not, but yeah, I mean, for example, a lot of people within developer ecosystem or developer marketing ecosystem, like, oh, developers don't like marketing. No, man, like, developers don't like marketing. That's like fluffy, or that's like shitty. You do things the right way, right? Like, I think developer programs, again, I'm biased because like, yeah, I'm responsible for it, right? So like, developer programs is a way of marketing, right? But I'm giving them value. I'm not saying, see my product, it's so cool. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying, you can get the value out of it while you're using it. You can see, oh yeah, it's built using Algolia. Okay, yeah, autocomplete is there. Oh, tolerance is there. Like, things like that. So I think developers don't just hate marketing. Developers hate like traditional marketing, like, or like, just tractable marketing. Like, and there is value to that statement that developers don't like marketing. It's just like you have to be smart about it, not smart in the sense of creepy, but smart in the sense of what's value to them. Can you deliver value to them while you're marketing to them? I think they won't mind that, because they'll learn something in the process, or they'll get to experience something in the process. So.
I think that's a great way to close this conversation. Thanks a lot for taking the time today. If people want to follow you or reach out to you, is there like what's the preferred way to do so?
Twitter, Natwar86. Yeah.
All right, cool. I will also link that in the show notes. All right. Again, thanks a lot for joining me. This was a lot of fun, and talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thanks, man. It was great.
Bye-bye.
Chatting with you. Yeah, bye.